This is a demonstration of Nintex workflow and forms that is installed on a SharePoint 2013 environment. And in this demonstration, what we're going to show you are the basics of how the workflow and the forms tool work. Essentially, Nintex is installed directly on the web front-end server right on top of SharePoint. And it extends the native out-of-the-box functionality of SharePoint workflow and forms and makes it very, very easy for end users to use. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through an end user experience first on how the workflow and forms works. And then I'm going to show you on the back end how those workflows were built. So for this particular example, we're going to jump into the HR area. And within here, we have an example of a leave request. So you can imagine if you're going to request some time off, this is where you would go to fill out the form on your intranet to request that time off. There's two lists here on the page. One is the leave requests themselves, and then over here are the calendar of items, which are all the leave requests that have been approved. So what I'm going to do here first is we're going to fill out a request as an employee for some time off. So maybe I'm feeling a little sick today, so we're going to do a sick day request. We'll pick the type of request it's going to be. It could be bereavement, jury duty, regular vacation time. So I'm going to request some time off from, let's say, Friday until the following Friday. Maybe I'm feeling really bad. I'm just going to put feeling bad. And you could even do it on behalf of someone. Now, your organization may choose to have different fields in your form, and that's the beauty of SharePoint, is that you can configure it to capture whatever data you would like to capture. I'm going to go ahead and hit the Save button, and the workflow is going to kick off automatically, and you'll see that I just got an instant message, and this is the way the notification came in, that the sick leave request was received. Now, in your scenario, you don't have to have it sent via instant message. You can send it via email as well. This particular example is set up so that I happen to be online and my status is green, it will send it to me automatically. And if I'm not online, it'll send it via email. So now that I know that I've received the notification, that means my boss has probably received notification as well. So let's jump over in his computer, and there's the notification right there that just came in his email box. And you'll notice that the email is very much tailored so that the boss has everything that he needs to make the decision. The subject line, it says response required to approve a sick leave request from Eden Stafford. Down here in the main body, it tells you that Eden Stafford is requesting sick leave, so note that's the field that I filled out in the form, leaving on the 30th and returning on the 6th for a total of 48 business hours, and HR is reporting that he has a balance of 80 hours available. So the workflow has done everything here. It sent out the email, it captured the total hours of the request, it's gone into that external system that you may have that your hours are in, it's pulled that information out, put it in here, and the boss has everything that he or she needs to make the decision. Now what the boss can do is they have a couple options. One of my favorite options is what's called lazy approval within Nintex. You can literally type in the word approved and hit send. Doesn't have to be necessarily the word approved. You can put in here whatever terms that you would like to have as far as responses. Put yes, no, no way, since my request was a little ridiculous over a whole week, just because I'm feeling bad today. And those responses then get pushed back into the workflow gets processed, and then you go from there. Now you can also open up the SharePoint website as well by clicking here, or you can use Nintex Mobile to get on your mobile device in the app that's available in the App Store and use that to approve items as well. So there are multiple ways to approve this particular item. My preference is just use the lazy approval right within your email and reply directly to it and type approved and go from there. So very, very user-friendly from that perspective. Now here in just a second, we're going to get another instant message that's going to tell us that the time off request was approved. Now once that item is approved, it's also going to go into that external system and deduct the hours since it was approved. So it could be an ADP payroll system, could be anything. And then in addition to that, it's also going to come into the calendar and add a calendar item in here since it's approved, and it'll show on the page, which I'll show you in just a second. So there's the second instant message. It says your sick leave request was approved. So we've got that, and the workflow's been processed. And I'll also come in and refresh the page, and you'll see that the item is now in the calendar from the 30th on to the 6th of November, which is really nice, and we can see that processed. Now let's go in and show you how we built this workflow in such an easy way. So I'm going to click on leave request first, and we look at the list here of all the requests that are out there, and the workflow lives within the list or the library, whichever one that you're putting it in. And it's up here right in the same place where you access workflow natively within SharePoint. So these are the out-of-the-box workflows. I think there may be 5, 6 of them that are native, just a couple there. If you happen to build workflows in SharePoint Designer, this is where you get access to those. But right here is the Nintex interface. We're going to come in and manage a workflow that's already existing. So we can create a new one if we want. Notice there are published and unpublished versions that are out here. This one is on version number 30, which is really nice to be able to see that. And in the event that you're modifying the workflow down the road, you can be in your production environment and have an unpublished version so that you can tweak your workflow before you're ready to publish it out and have it active. So I'm going to open this one up, and you will be presented with the Nintex interface right here. Over on the left-hand side are all the actions that are available. There are 100 and some actions over here on the left-hand side, and then you can drag and drop these actions over into the right-hand side where you can start to build out your workflow. So imagine you're in the kitchen trying to cook something up. All the ingredients are over here on the left-hand side, everything that we have over here. And with those ingredients, we can make almost an unlimited number of workflows over here on the right-hand side as far as different combinations and the tools that we need and can configure in order to build this out. Again, it's a drag and drop interface, so if the first thing I wanted to do is send out a notification, you just drag it over here, click on the drop down to configure it, and you're off and running. Now in our workflow, the first thing that we need to do is go over into that external system and get our information, because it may be that all I have over here on this side is maybe an employee number, and I want to go over into that system and get my first name, my last name, and just get all the information that we need. Also, we want to edit the title. One of the things you'll notice, or may have noticed on the page, is that instead of sick day, we wanted to input the user's first name, last name, then sick day. And so what we're doing is modifying the title to say that. Then down here, we're going to send out that very first instant message. Could be email as well. Here it's going to the requester. And these are just people picker fields, so you can come in here and choose that it goes to a certain individual. We just did a really quick lookup from right here, and you could have initiator, requester, manager. All this stuff is going to come from Active Directory, and those fields that are available. The subject line is right here, along with the body as well. And notice these are reference items, so you'll see your sick leave, in my situation, request was received. And you can insert these really, really easily. So you could say, you are requesting to start your time off on, and maybe we want to put the start date in here. So I'm going to click insert reference. These are all the properties that are available in that form that we filled out. I'm going to click on start date, and now it will be in the message every time that it's sent out. Last thing I'll show you configuration wise here is your delivery types. So I could have it always go via email, always go via instant message, or set the user preference, which means if I'm online, my status is green, go ahead and send me the instant message. If not, send it via email. So I'm going to go ahead and save these options, and then we'll come down and we'll see a couple more actions here. Get leave balance, which fall under the HR session, and then also calculate business days. These are custom actions. So in the event that you want to achieve something and you don't see it within the Nintex interface over here as an available action, you can create your own custom action, save it, and then reuse it down the road. So in this example where we want to connect to an external system, maybe it is ADP that you want to connect to, you can save that and then you can use it in other workflows down the road. Also, it's nice because if that system ever changes and you switch from ADP to another external provider, you could always update that one individual action, and your workflows are going to carry that through, which is really handy. Now we've introduced what's called a flexi task here, where we're going to go out and assign the task to someone and ask them to make a decision, which is the manager, and it will be either rejected or approved. And again, we'll configure that right here as well. So when we get into this configuration screen, you'll see that it's assigned to whoever the manager is in Active Directory. The email that the manager got that I read to you a minute ago has all the references in here. So Eden is requesting sick leave from the start date to the end date. All of this information's in here. We can come in and reject or approve it, so those are the outcomes. Very easy to add additional ones. So since mine was a little ridiculous, maybe the manager wants to put it into a pending state, so I want to add a third outcome. And everything's configuration based in here, so you'll see all the behaviors. So for instance, you'll see the first response applies, and then it goes to the next step. Or maybe if there were multiple individuals, the majority must decide, or all must agree. So very, very easy to configure this. And there's other little subtle things in here that I really like reminders. So that way if the manager doesn't respond, we will send him 4 reminders. We will send them to him every 4 hours, only during business hours. And he's going to get a total of 4 of them. This is the message that he's going to get in the subject line, so it's not going to approve itself. The task name, the URL, and the description down here below. And maybe if he doesn't respond within an appropriate amount of time, you want to escalate the issue, so we can have an escalation point. So we'll delegate the task to someone else after so many days. It'll tell you here the approver was unable, so it would say who the approver was unable to complete the following task. Please take on this and approve it from here. So really, really nice to be able to do that. So a lot of configuration items. And I really highlight that because this is all configuration based. It's no customization here unless you get into kind of custom actions. But the theory here is that a project manager, business analyst would be able to do this type of work. We reject it, send a note and say we're sorry. If it's approved, we add it to the calendar, update the balance in that system, and then send a little note that says congratulations right there at the end. So that's essentially how the workflow works as far as the interface in this example. I do want to take you through a couple actions here. We can send notifications, assign the flexi task, which is the decision point that you saw right here. And I'm going to highlight a few more down here. A lot of integrations. You can call a web service. We could go to SQL and execute a SQL command. Go to CRM if you happen to use CRM and create a record or delete or disable a record. And again, all these are configuration based. So I'll show you this one for an example real quick with execute SQL. Come in and configure this action, and all you have to do is input, and this may be a little bit more advanced for some business users, but you input the connection string right here. Do you need any credentials in order to access it? You input that right there. Put in your query, store the results somewhere in these little variables that are really easy to create. And then right here in the interface, you can run this after you've configured it to test it and see what the outcomes are. Now, the SQL Action web service are probably the most advanced ones in here, but the rest of them are fairly easy. But just wanted to show you that one just as a quick example. Now, the balance of these, a lot of things that you can pull information from. We can query BCS, LDAP, CRM, XML, connect it to project server, or make a web request. And for the non-technical folks on the call, you don't have to worry about all of these right here as far as not understanding those for sure. But a lot of more basic ones are in here. Check an item in, check it out. Take a Word document and convert it to a PDF. So maybe you're going through a contract process and you want to have something approved. We can convert that Word document to a PDF and then send it out. Or maybe it's a press release. The press release is in Word format, and when you're ready to send it out, you convert it to PDF. Delete items, copy items, check them in, check them out. I kind of already went over. Update items. You can, in a help desk scenario, you're updating the ticket along the way. Once an approver approves or takes it to the next step, you can change the status to something else. A lot of logic and workflow, so we can do some calculations, filters, run if a certain condition is met. Parallel actions, meaning I want 3 things to be going on at the exact same time that aren't interdependent upon each other, so you can do that. And then also set a condition or maybe send a loop. A lot of Nintex Live stuff, which I'll come back to in just a second. And then operations as well. So we can do math calculations, pause the workflow, which is really good in the onboarding process. So you can pause for a certain period of time, or maybe pause until a specific date. So really nice to have those configuration options there. Really helpful in the onboarding process where an employee maybe needs to come in and have a 30-day review or 60-day review. You can pause the workflow for that period of time. And you could even go in with the actions here and add an appointment to their calendar to remind them of that meeting. Create a task for that meeting, or even get suggested meeting times for the HR person, the manager, and or the employee to see what's the best time that I should schedule that. And in the enterprise version, you have a lot of other actions as well. So you can go in, and especially in the onboarding process, you can add users to Active Directory groups. You can create Active Directory groups, even create Active Directory users. And something that's become a lot more popular is even decommissioning those users. So in the offboarding process, termination process, however you want to classify it, you may want to make sure that those credentials are decommissioned fairly quickly, because it could be a Friday night or Saturday or over the weekend. IT and HR maybe aren't around, and the workflow that the manager initiates can handle the decommissioning of those users, and even delete them from ADD groups and do some other things. So really, really handy to do that. The next thing I'll show you real quick are a lot of the Nintex live actions. These are all just kind of within SharePoint directly to connect and do a lot of things, but there are a lot of services out there that you may want to leverage, and you can leverage those all right here within these actions. And I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because there's 145 of them, but we could go over to Bing, we could go to Box and delete a file, download a file, or query a file. Also DocuSign, if you want to get your signature physically on a page. There are several actions in here that will allow you to get that signature on the page. I know when I purchased my house a couple years ago, all of the papers that I signed prior to the closing were done via DocuSign on my mobile device on my phone. So really, really handy to be able to do that. Dropbox, you can delete files, download files, query files. Dynamics CRM Online, these are all the actions for integrations and touch points there. Exchange Online, not the on-premise, but online. You can use all of these actions here as far as deleting tasks, creating items. Facebook for wall posts. We can go to Google and do a couple things like querying files or uploading files or using the URL shortener. And also some LinkedIn integrations here as far as updates and discussions. And if you happen to use MailChimp for mail campaigns, they have the ability to create the campaign, delete the campaign, and really do some nice connections there. If you happen to use Azure, you can go out and create virtual machines with actions here, maybe download an RDP file, and a lot of Office 365 integrations as far as checking items in and out. And I'll kind of skip through these since there are a lot of them. And then down towards the bottom, we have some OneDrive integrations, Rackspace as far as rebuilding servers and checking some things out there. And then also a lot of Salesforce integrations. Chatter, which is kind of the social component of Salesforce, but also the core Salesforce items related to creating records, creating users, deleting records within there as well. Also SharePoint Online, not the on-premise, but online version. You have all kinds of interactions here as far as checking items in, checking them out. And a couple other things here with StrikeIron as far as currency, exchange rate, text messaging service, Twitter, if you want to. Maybe don't want to give somebody the credentials to be able to tweet, but you want them to go through an approval process, then input those tweets, the potential tweets, into a list, have them go through approval process and let this tweet it out. And then also Weather Underground, WordPress, and some Yammer integrations from there. So quickly went through these really, really fast, but just a lot of integrations with other external things. Do note that Nintex is adding new actions all the time, so as long as you have your software assurance with this, you're going to be able to get those actions updated on a daily basis. I think they send them out weekly, but whenever they come out, you have them available. Really easy to import and export workflows from a development environment to production. And then we have the workflow settings here. So in the event that you want the workflow to start off whenever a new item is created, or when it's modified, or I want the workflow to start based upon a certain condition, you can do that here as well. Ultimately, when you're done, you can publish the workflow right here, and you're all set as far as the workflow is concerned. I do want to take one really quick minute and go over the forms component just for a second, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. You'll notice the out-of-the-box form that I showed you just a minute ago is pretty plain Jane vanilla SharePoint, you see right here. But what you can do is leverage Nintex forms to build out much more dynamic form. So I'm going to click on Nintex forms right here. You'll be presented immediately with the interface, and it already builds your form. So let's take out the Nintex logo, or imagine taking out the logo and putting in your organization's logo, color scheme. You'll be able to have your form. Really easy to configure these forms so that if I want to add some more space, move things around, I can take this field for the end date, move it over to the right. We take the start date, move it down, and then we can stack it right or place it right beside each other. So really, really easy to kind of build forms. All the form elements are over on the left-hand side, so again, it's drag and drop. So if I wanted to put a border in here, I could drag that border over here and put a line in here to separate things, maybe put some text above it or below it. So really a nice way to really build out some nice forms. A lot of the SharePoint interactions here we could look up in a list, put a list view in here, and even look up all the columns that are directly integrated. And notice as I click around, the ribbon interface changes. So maybe on the Save button down here and below, instead of being Save, I want it to be Save and Submit, so I could change that, maybe execute some JavaScript when we click on that button. You can do that as well. Really, really nice to have this ribbon interface up here at the top to be able to really work with the form in a really nice way. The other thing that I'll highlight real quick is the ability to target different devices. So you can target something like an iPhone, Android, all smartphones, and with one click I now have a mobile view of that particular form, which is really, really handy. And I think the last thing I'll point out too is you could put rules in place. So for instance, end date, I could put a rule in here, and I could come in and say, if sick leave is selected, I want to make end date disappear, and you can come in and format that right here as well. A lot of stuff we could get into the weeds with Nintex forms. Also just note that you can publish Nintex forms so that you can allow anonymous users to submit these as well. So I won't go over forms too much. This is primarily focused on the workflow, but that's how we build this out. Thank you.